Hello everyone, it's Alissa from Inside the Photobox and Photobox Designs. I'm here today to show you how to add pictures into this cute little template of snow angels. When you're done, you will have a photo that looks something like this. Although there are a few different options, and I wanted to show you the template itself, and then I'll show you how to import in a picture, cut it out, and place it into the template and even make it look more realistic using some dodging and burning techniques and some color toning. So here we go. In this template that you can purchase at www.insidethephotobox.com, and there's a link in the comments, you will open it up and you will see that there's a bunch of different layers. We have on the top, there's a snow layer. There's actually two different snow layers. The snow layers are very cute. At the end, it helps to kind of bring together the whole composite, especially if the child that you photographed is not actually in the snow, so that you can add a little snow to them. Also, you will see that there is one folder that says pre-made layers and another one that says create your own. And I'm going to go through that and show you what each one of those means. Also, right now in this tutorial, you'll see that there is this layer here. This is actually the person that I'm going to be bringing in. I already cut him out, but I brought him in, but I'm going to do it all over again and show you how to do that. So we have here pre-made layers. If you click and you open up, and when you look here at these little boxes with little eyeballs, if there's no eyeball, it means that these are the layers that are not visible. If you click on them, then those are the layers that are visible. So whenever there's an eyeball, it means that's whatever's on the top, that's what you're looking at. So looking now, you see here it says here pre-made layers. I've got 3: single, 3, and double. I might have to reorder those. Single, double, and 3. That's the way it'll come when you purchase it. So if you click on single, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at this layer right here, and it already has a little snow angel that you can put right into your picture, ready to go. Click it off, go to the double. Okay, I already have 2. I have the 1, 2. This is just like the pictures that have come with your purchase as samples, because I sent the pictures along so that it would be a good reference so you can remember where to put your people. Now, if you have 2 children, one might be a little bit smaller than the other. This is a little bit of a smaller angel. This is a little bit bigger. And then there's a triple. So you have an angel right here, one here, and one here. And those are the 3 pre-made layers, meaning that they're pretty much set. They're just one layer and there's not much you can do in terms of changing the sizes. But if you close them and shut them off and open up your create your own, what you have here is an editable single angel and a blank layer. So let me show you. Let me close off the editable single angel, and you'll see that what's left is just a blank layer, and that's it. I'm going to shut the blank layer off, back to nothing, and here's the angel. So now this angel, here you have 1. And what you can do with that is that you can highlight the angel. So you see how I'm now on the layers panel. If I press Command T or Control T, so if you're on a Mac, you're going to press Command T. If you're on a PC, you're going to press Control T. You're going to open up your transformation tool. So this is pretty cool. Now you can take and grab it by the sides. Now I am using Photoshop CC 2020, which means I'm grabbing the side and I'm not holding down the Shift key. I don't need to do that. It will retain its aspect ratio. But if I were to hold the Shift key down, look what happens. Then you can change the size, you can change the wideness, you can change the length. So it's really up to you. That's why it's editable. You can change it to fit the dimensions of your own children. You can also turn it and move it and put it in a different location. You can also make it smaller and maybe put one up here. So we can leave one right here, press the check mark, Now you can also go here to the tool, to the move tool. If you click on the move tool and you keep this checked, which says show transformation controls, and then you click on the layer that you want to move. So if this is your angel and I click right on it, well, now my transformation tool has opened up for me. That's just a neat little trick. So another cool thing that you can do is you can duplicate this. So what I do is I take the editable single angel, I'm going to drag it to this little icon right there, and that will duplicate my layer. All right, maybe you want to do, maybe you have 4 kids and you want to fit 4 kids into this template. So duplicate it 4 times. And then using your move tool, you can move them around. Whoops. Actually, you might want to command. Ooh, I went backwards. So let's see. I'm going to actually take this bottom layer and I'm going to lock it so that won't happen anymore. And I'm going to move the little angels. I have 4 of them now, and you can move them around. You move them around so that you can make them all fit. You can change the configuration of the angels if you'd like to have some turning a different way. And once you put your people in, it'll give you a little bit of a better idea of how you want to make all your little angels fit. And you can make some, if you have some smaller kids and some bigger kids, you can make some smaller angels. You can really do whatever you want. And don't forget, this is Photoshop, so that if you needed to, let's say, blend these in a little bit better, although everything is looking pretty good to me, but you can always throw a layer mask on any of these. And you can use a black brush. So I'm pressing my B for brush, or you can just go here to the brush tool. My opacity is at 30. I'm going to want to maybe, if I want to delete something, bring it all the way up. And another little neat trick for changing opacity without having to go up to the top here is using your numbers. So if I press the number 9, my trips, press, whoops, my trick is not working right now because why should it? And the dog is barking. Welcome to my tutorial world. If you press the 8, nope, not working. All right, skip my little trick. It does usually work, but right now it's not. And I'm going to let my dog out. Just excuse me for a moment. And I will be back in 2 seconds. My dog is a little Havanese. He's adorable. Sorry for the delay. And we're back. Okay, so now I have 4 little angels. You can move them around, do whatever you like with them in any configuration. You can twist them, you can turn them, and you can use them however you like. So I'm going to turn them off for right now. I'm just going to go back to my pre-made layer, to my single one right here. And I'm going to work with this layer, and I'm going to bring a photo into Photoshop, and we're going to create this single angel. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and I have this. Now, I did not photograph any kids. I made this template last night, and I did not have any children around to photograph, so I've used a stock photo that I got off of Adobe Stock. I just brought this in. Now you can't see it. Why can't you see it? Because if you look at my layers panel, it came in under the templates. We don't want it to be under the template. You can't see it. So I'm just grabbing it and dragging it up to the top, and now it's over. So what we're going to do first is we're going to cut him out. Now, like I was saying, I used Adobe Stock, and I tried to find a photo that sort of matched the lighting pattern and the color toning, but it's not perfect. A better scenario will be that you're going to photograph your own people, and you take note on the shadows that are going on in this scene. You can see that there are some darker shadows over here. The shadows are pretty much all to the left. You can see the shadow here, shadow here. Shadows are good. You know, you don't want to overdo shadows, but shadows ground everything, so you do want some shadows. So when you do photograph your subject, your child, your client, you want to make sure that your subject has more shadows to the left. So you're going to want to bring your light source in towards the right. You can even see that the light source, the way the egg is, you can see that my light source was more focused in this direction, going from right to left. That my light source was on the right and the shadows are on the left. So this little guy, whoops, sorry, this is my little cutout guy. Here's my guy that we're about to cut out. Notice he doesn't really have a lot of shadows. He's pretty flat. We're going to work on that after we cut him out. So let's start out with the cutting out process. Now, he should be fairly simple to cut out because there's enough contrast here between his outfit, which is really bright, and the white behind him. But, you know, it's still going to take a little bit of nudging to work. So when you do shoot your own client or child, I highly suggest you put them on a contrasting background. So if your child is all dressed up in blue and this kind of outfit, you know, put them on something that won't blend in. A white cloth on the floor would be fine. You just want to make sure that you're not, for an outfit like this, you wouldn't want to lay them on a blue background because it's going to be much harder to detect and harder to cut them out. So I'm going to go to the quick selection tool. I'm going to start there. Now I'm going to start with my quick selection being at the plus, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So one way that you can make something bigger, you can make your tools bigger, is by using the parentheses. You can use the parentheses. If you use them going back and forth, those two parentheses will make your tools larger and smaller. Of course, you can always go up here and you can change the size more manually, but it is actually just so much faster to use the parentheses. So I'm going to bring my tool here, and I'm going to start by doing quick selection. And I'm going to bring him around like this. Now, he does have some shadows that the quick selection tool is picking up on. So that's what we'll have to work and get these shadows out. But, you know, he cuts out fairly quickly. Fairly quick. So get the little marching ants around his edge of his body. And then I'm going to take a closer look. Now, you can do two things. I want to bring these lines in. So you can either go up here and go to bring it from the positive to the negative sign, to the minus sign, or I like to stay on the positive and I press the Option key. If I press the Option key, it will turn it to a negative. So I can just keep my thumb on my Option key, and that way if I need to go backwards and forwards between the positive and the negative, it's really fast. I'm also going to make this a little bit smaller, take a look around, push my negative key again. My Option key to make it negative. See, now I went a little too far, so I let go of my thumb and I bring it back. And it's doing a pretty good job. Excuse my dog, I'm really sorry about that. Pushing back down on it again to bring it in. I'm in the positive key. It's hard for you to see that it's positive, but I am using the positive right now. I could tell that the marching ants didn't quite make it all the way around. So I'm going to bring that around. This is looking pretty good. Okay, now I'm pushing my Option key again to make it a negative. And it's negative. And now I'm back to positive. And it still needs to be a little bit more on the edges, but now it overshot it because it picked up on the shadows. So I'm pressing my Option key. That brings me back to negative. And it's looking pretty good. Fairly good. So what I would do next is I'm going to go into Select and Mask, and you can see that it looks pretty good. You know, it's a pretty good selection. I'm going to go to make this a little bit smoother. I'm going to feather it just a little bit and smooth out my edges a little bit. And I think it looks pretty good. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to output to selection to layer mask. Press OK. And now there's a layer mask, and this is my little guy. So I'm actually just going to delete out the first one that I had done because I don't want you to be confused. Okay, so here he is. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I'm highlighted on the boy and not the mask. Okay, I could do it either I can go click on him and the layers panel, or I can go to my move tool and click on him. All right, and what I want to do now is when I use my move tool, it brings, and I click on the boy, it brings up my transformation tool. But the other way I could have done that was pressing Command T. So now I'm in my transformation tool. I'm going to want to turn him a little bit, rotate him so that he fits into the angel, and I'm going to drag him. Again, I'm not using my shift key. I do not want to make him, I do not want to change his aspect ratio. I don't want to make him skinnier or fatter. I'm going to just keep him the way he is. So I'm bringing him out, and there goes the dog again. Welcome to my tutorial world. So, all right, so I think he looks pretty good here. I like him. I think he's looking really cute. And I'll make him a little bit smaller. And that looks pretty good. So, okay, so now I'm going to press the check mark. Now, his limbs, I'm going to twist them a little bit again, this way. Bring him down just slightly. Now, here's a little neat trick. Now, this boy happens to fit into the angel really, really well. But if, let's say, you have a limb that doesn't fit into your angel especially well, here's a nice little trick that you can do. But you do need to rasterize your layer. You need to make sure that it's not a smart object when you do this. So right now, my boy is a smart object. You could tell by the little box there. I'm going to right-click on him. Actually, I'm going to right-click on the layer, and I'm going to rasterize the layer because this won't work with a smart object. So now I'm going to go to Edit, Puppet Warp. And I'm going to want to just maybe I'll shift his leg slightly. So I'm going to use the Puppet Warp tool, and I'm going to take all these little pins. You pin down the spaces that you don't want to move. So you want to make sure that they don't move when you're warping, because you don't want the whole image to move. You just want the spot that you're working with to move. So now I've pinned all this down so it should not move, and I'm going to just take his leg. I'm going to move it this way. And that's pretty cool. I'm going to actually move him up a little bit more like that, and I like it. So if you're satisfied, press the check mark, and of course if you'd like to see what I had just done, you can go step back in your history panel. So I'm going to just step back one, and it'll show you that's where his leg was. Now with the Puppet Warp, it's this way. Now this boy was fine really. To begin with, I didn't really need to use the Puppet Warp, but I did want to show you how that works because you may end up with some pictures where you'd like to change that a little bit. Okay, so now we need to ground him. So how are we going to do that? Because what I mean by grounding is that he looks like he's now floating above our angel. So we want to bring him down, and the way you do that is with shadows. So there's a few different ways of bringing in shadows that we're going to use. Now, the first one I'm going to start out with is I'm going to right click on this layer, go to my blending options, and I'm going to go to a drop shadow. And I can see that the angle of the light is about the angle of the light in the way that it was lit, where the light is coming in from the right. So I have a drop shadow. You can play around with distance. And you could see that the shadows are coming in now a little bit. You can play around with spread. You know, these are just things that you just kind of work and play around with as you go. You can play around with size. Look how large that is. Or you can make it a little bit smaller, but then it gets a little bit darker. You can also play around with opacity. So that's a pretty dark shadow. And I would like to try to match the shadows that I have here. So you can see that the shadows are coming in mostly on the left side. So I'm going to click it. I can even open up another one, make it a little bit darker. You can always add more by clicking on this plus sign, and then it sort of duplicates it for you. So I can leave it off or I can put it on. And I'm going to stop right there, just put maybe 2 shadows in. Already, just by looking at the effects here, I'm going to shut them off. you can see what a difference. He's floating, he's grounded. So much better, so much different. And the shadows are looking very similar to the shadows that are true to the picture. So here's another thing that I like to do a lot with shadows. I like to dodge and burn them in. So actually, first I want to do is I want to add a shadow layer here. So I'm going to click on the boy. I'm going to go to this little icon right here, and that's going to give me a new layer. That's how I like to create new blank layers. There are so many different ways to create a layer. That's the way I do it. It's a new transparent layer, but it's above the boy. I would like him to be under the boy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush tool. So I'm going to press the letter B, or I could just go right up here. And I also want it to be I want it to be black. So I'm going to just press the letter X, and that switches the foreground color to black. And I want my opacity to be very, very, oh, and it worked this time. My opacity, I want it to be very small. So here's how you change opacity without going up and using this tool. You just have to press your numbers. So if I want, let's say 10% opacity, I press the number 1. If I want 70% opacity, I press the number 7. That's just an easy little shortcut. If you want it to be more specific, like if you want it to be, let's say 3%, you're going to have to go in and just do it manually, either put the number 3 in or use the slider. But I'm going to start off with 10% opacity on a black layer with a black brush. And I'm just going to paint in, let's see, are you working? Making sure I have it here. Oh, let's see. Sometimes things don't always work. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's good. So 10% was a little bit too small. Let's try 50%. I'm going to paint in 50%. And I'm just doing it now. You see how the circle is going over the boy's body, but nothing is happening to the boy's body. It's only happening under the boy's body. That is because this layer is under the boy. So it's not going to affect the layer that's above it. Now just take a look here. So I'm putting in some pretty dark shadows because in reality, you're going to have the darkest part of your shadow right where the body and the body touches the ground. And then it kind of starts to spread itself out. And you can even just see it here. This is a pretty thick shadow coming off of that egg. But even here, you could see the darkest part of the shadow is really at the edge line, and then it starts to spread out. So I want to sort of mimic that, and I only want to mimic that in places that there would be shadows. So you see here, I'm going to give it, his leg probably would have a shadow. His head. All right. And of course, like anything in Photoshop, you can always go back and you can mask. But let me just take this layer, this little layer. I'm going to call this layer shadow. Okay. I'm going to take, and I'm going to highlight it, make it red so you know what we're working with. I'll take that shadow layer and I'm just going to pull it above the boy. And now see what happens? If I put it above the boy, all of those black marks that I made are also above the boy. Now they're on the boy. So that's not what I want to do with this layer. I'm putting it back down there for the time being. So this is my shadow layer. Now, something else that you can do with a shadow layer that I like to do a lot is I will then go to my filter and I will say go to blur, and I will go to the Gaussian blur. So what the Gaussian blur does is it kind of takes your shadow and blurs it a little bit. So let's start with nothing. Bring the shadow back to being really dark. And then if you take your blur, it sort of spreads out your shadow a little bit. You can keep adding it now. If I went really large, you almost lose the entire shadow because you've spread it out so much. You've blurred it out. I don't want to lose the shadow. I like the dark pieces. I just want to give it a little bit more of a spread. So I like that. And of course, like anything else, this is on its own layer, so you can always change the opacity of the shadow itself. See, you can take the opacity down and you could bring it back up. You can also add a layer mask to it, and with a black brush at a low opacity, you could always paint some parts of it out slowly if you wanted to. if you felt you needed to, if you overdid any of it. So, okay, already this boy, he's looking so much more grounded. Here he is, right? So let's go back. We have the effects here. We have take away all those drop shadows and take away the shadow that we just created. I'm going to put the shadow that we just created back in first, looking pretty good, but he's still floating. If I put my drop shadows back in, he's really, really grounded. He's so much better now. Okay, but he's also not really, he's a little bit brighter than the scene because, like I said, I did not take this photo of this boy, so the lighting doesn't match the scene. That's why we had to create those shadows. But let's add some dodging and actually let's go back to the boy. Now I have a boy here. We're going to do a little bit of color matching, and so I've clicked on the layer with the boy, not the mask, but the boy itself, and I'm going to go to edit. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to go to image, adjustments, and I'm going to go to match color. So I'm matching this boy and I want to match him with the scene. So I'm going to go to the source, and if you see here, the source is that the template is called blank.jpg. The source is that I want to match it to is blank.jpg. So I'm going to click on that and I'm going to press the neutralize button and I'm going to play around with these fades. Okay, so you can see the color changed on him. Made him actually a little bit redder. So I'm going to take some of that color intensity down. Whoops, now it's really far down. All right, and let's bring it back up a little bit better. Let's take the luminance, how bright he is, and let's bring him down a little bit too so we can match the scene a little bit better. And I'm going to bring that, and I'm going to fade this a little bit. Okay, and just do a little fade, and I'm just playing around. And now if I go back to the preview button over here, it's showing you. If I click it off, you see I just really brought the brightness down to match the scene a little bit better. So that's what it looked like before, and that's what it looks like now. So already now he's matching the scene so much better. So that was just a little trick. I might bring the intensity back up just a little bit, maybe the fade down. You know, you can always go back in later and play with other kinds of sliders that can bring your luminance back up or down, your saturation back up or down. Preview again, it's pretty bright, bring him down, maybe a little bit more intensity, and I'm going to just press OK. All right, so he's really starting to match the scene so much better. The last thing I want to do is I want to dodge him and burn him a little bit because, again, he's flat, and the scene should be that he should have more shadow on his sides and more light where the light was hitting him. Just the way the egg over here is very bright over here and darkest over there. You should be the same. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how I like to dodge and burn using a curves layer. Actually, 2 curves layers. So I'm going to do this. I actually created an action for this, but I'm going to do this from scratch so that you can see exactly how I do it. So I'm going to go into Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Curves. Okay, and I'm going to call this one Burn. All right, and I'm going to take my layer, whoops, and I'm going to just bring it down. Okay, and I'm going to make it pretty dark. I want to make this pretty dark because we're burning. And of course, we don't really want him to look like that. We also don't want this to affect the color as much. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to change this to luminosity. All right, because we really just want to affect the luminosity of him, not his color. So I'm going back to burn, but my layer mask is white, which means now everything looks dark. So I'm going to press Command I. I'm going to press Command I and I'm going to inverse my layer mask. So Command I, now my layer mask is black and I'll be able to work on that later. Now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to go to Layer, new adjustment layer, curves. This time I'm going to call it dodge because I want to brighten parts of the scene. I'm going to dodge it. I'm going to take my curve. I'm going to bring it up, brighten, make it pretty white. And again, I'm going to go back down here and just click luminosity so it doesn't affect the color. Press Command I and make my layer mask black. And now I have a dodge and burn. So I'm going to go to my brush tool, which is the B, and I'm going to invert because I want a white brush to go over my black mask to reveal. So I'm going to press X to give myself a white mask, a white brush. And I want to start with a really low opacity. You always have to start with really low opacities and then you can build. So I'm going to press my number 1 and that brought me to a 10% opacity. And I'm going to start by burning. I want to burn. So like I said, I want my boy, I want his body to have more shadows. You kind of want to do this slowly, but you're not going to hurt anything if you overdo it. You just go back in and you change it. So, but you'll be amazed to see how even just the littlest, the littlest of shadows, the littlest of dodging and burning actually will really help him. I'm even going to burn his face down a little bit. I'm going to go up to a 20% opacity and really give him a little bit more of a burn. And give his body just a little bit more. And I'm using a soft brush, by the way. Okay, so this side of his face probably would be much more in shadow than the other side. I'm kind of following the line of the egg a little bit. So we have that. Right, maybe even a little bit more up there. And now I'm going to go to the dodge tool. The dodge is what brings out the lights. So here, he would be much brighter on this side, right? Even the brightness might hit him a lot more here, a lot more here. The side of his face should be a little bit brighter. And I'm going to go back to the burn tool. Maybe burn this down a little bit over here also. It's a little too much, a little too bright. And I'm going to, kind of give him a black eye. That's weird. All right, I'm gonna go back to my burn tool. I'm gonna press the X, and I'm going to get his eye back. Okay, so let's take a look at your dodge and burn layers. I'm actually going to take my dodge and burn layers, and I'm gonna just put them into their own folder, so I could call it D and B. And then I can shut it off and on, and look what a difference that makes. All right, that's him before, and that's him after. I think maybe I burned him a little bit too much, so I'm gonna go back to my burn layer. I'm using a white brush. I'm just gonna wipe some of the burn off because that's a layer mask for you. You can wipe it on, wipe it off. Oh, whoops! But of course, right now I'm using a white brush, and I'm adding more, and I didn't need to do that. I'm gonna take a step back. 2 steps back, and I'm going to press, I want a black brush to bring take some of the burn away. So I'm going to wipe off some of the, I keep doing that. All right, a black brush to take some of the burn away, because I think I had overburned him a little bit. And that's how it goes, folks. It's a lot of trial and error and going back and forth and looking to see, oh, okay, how's that looking? I still think I might have burned him a little too much up here. So I'm going to give him a little bit more on his face. And let's see, dodge and burn. Shut him off. And that's the way his lighting was before. And this is the way he is now. Okay. So I think that he's actually looking pretty darn good. So the last thing I want to do with him is give him some snow. The snow kind of like brings it together a little bit, and you can change the opacity of your snow a little bit. if you want to go in and do a global adjustment. And what I mean by that is you can always go in to any of the layers to making a new adjustment layer. You can maybe change the vibrance if you want to, and that'll cover, because you have your layer, your adjustment layer on the top here, it's going to affect everything above it. So if you want to add maybe just a little bit of vibrance to the entire thing, maybe you don't, maybe you want to desaturate it, maybe you want to add some saturation, maybe you want to do nothing. But there you go. He's looking much, much better. So let's just, no, I didn't really want that vibrance, so I'm going to take that out. Let's go backwards a little bit. Let's see where we started from. Let's turn off the dodge and burn. Let's turn off the effects, and let's turn off the shadow layers. And here he is. He's floating in space. We added some effects to him. Helps a lot. We added a dodge and burn that we use a little bit of Gaussian blur. And then we did some, we added a shadow layer, and we added some Gaussian blur to that shadow, and then we added some dodge and burn. And he's looking pretty good. So maybe I would still even go back in and adjust his face a little bit. I think he still burned a little bit too much, but that's it. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and sorry about the dog and sorry about the choking fit, but you know, this is life in the big city here. So, all right, thanks for watching. And if you aren't part of any of our Facebook groups, we have 2 groups. We have the Inside the Photo Box Photography and Photoshop group. That is a group that basically, although the template is in here, these are people that are shooting photographs inside a photo box. Really, really neat stuff. Some amazing, amazing things happen. We have it's the biggest box group there is right now on Facebook, with 17,000 members and growing every single day. And then we just created an offshoot to this group, so it's a little bit smaller, called Outside the Photo Box, Portraits and Composites. And this one is focusing more on compositing and general portraiture. And it's filling up. It's getting much larger. And it's also mostly the same amazing community. Right now we're at 478 members, but we're growing every day. So I encourage you to join our groups and become part of our community, because it's wonderful. And thanks for watching.